number is the 407-221-7378, is that correct?
Yes, that's Mr. Okafor's, that's been identified as Mr. Okafor's phone.
And when it says sent, that would be the phone from which it's sent?
Yes, sent from Mr. Okafor's phone.
Okay. And then the one that's receiving those would be 407-616-4234?
Yes, and it's, in his address book, that's Dory, who believes his brother.
Okay. But the phone that they are recovering these from is from Dory's phone, not from... Oh, it's from Okafor's phone. Okay. Okay, I'm with you. All right. And what is the... And this person who's coming in is a detective?
He's a digital forensics examiner. He testified in the other trials. He examined the physical phone, Mr. Okafor's physical phone that was found when he was arrested. These are text messages that had been just deleted, according to the detective. Somebody had deleted them, but he was able to recover them.
Okay.
The detective was. And these are, there were a bunch of text messages. These are some of them.
Able to, from this phone, 407-221-7378, to recover these deleted messages. All right, what is the objection going to be? Well, wait a minute. You said hearsay and then you said remote in time. Those are two different things. Which one are you arguing? Turn your microphone on, would you please?
I'm going to argue hearsay, first of all, because, one, you still haven't established, well, we don't know who is on the other side of this phone texting, and we don't know who actually have the phone at the time of the texting. We know that that number has been associated with Mr. Okafor, but still no one has established that Mr. Okafor has any phone. That phone was being used by everybody in that household. So I would say it's hearsay. And then in addition to that, Your Honor, I would think also that it's too remote in time to be admitted to prove anything in this case.
Any
that
other?
Would be some, I believe, Your Honor, that's probably almost 8-9 days before this September 10th incident occurred. I'm sorry, 16 days, Your Honor.
Okay. So hearsay and remoteness. Any other objections?
No, sir.
All right. Mr. Altman, the objection as to hearsay.
Well, there's been quite a bit of testimony already that this is Mr. Okafor's phone. In addition, Detective Michael will testify, as he did in the other two trials, that from his examination of the phone, he can determine that there's a great deal of evidence that this was Mr. Okafor's phone. Various things. There are selfies on the phone showing Mr. Okafor. There are Facebook, somebody, the word of this is escaping me, but somebody looked at Facebook and looked at, and it was Mr. Okafor who did that. So there is a good deal of evidence. There are some other messages where he says this, where he identifies himself. I mean, this, I believe in this phone, I may be wrong about that. But there is certainly circumstantial evidence in addition to the testimony we've already heard that this is his phone. So I don't think a hearsay objection would be appropriate. As to remoteness, I mean, this is not long before, this is whatever it is, 2 weeks, 16 days, whatever, before the murder. Mr. Okafor is asking, did you get that? The response is he's said he's going to be on his way at 8:30, which is 13 minutes away from when they're texting. The next thing is at 8:49, shortly after 8:30, and it's here, full clip. So I think it's clear that what these texts are about is, did you get it? Well, it just got here. It's here with a full clip, which would suggest it's a gun. And that's, I believe that's relevant.
And I will say it's not relevant because at this point, as the court may recall, in Mr. Altman's opening, he stated unequivocally that he believed that Mr. Okafor was a shooter, and he believed Mr. Okafor used a revolver because there were no shell casings discovered. And based on that, Your Honor, I would argue that to try to bring in a clip or anything that can't be linked up to the evidence in this case would be irrelevant and ought to be excluded. It would be it would allow an impermissible inference that, and thus far we haven't heard that from anybody, including the prosecutor who did a very thorough job in opening, saying that it was a revolver. So why would we allow something in about a clip some 16 days earlier that has nothing to do with this case? It would only be intended to prejudice the jury. It wouldn't have any probative value. It's not introduced to prove anything material in fact, because it had nothing to do with it. 16 days prior to the offense in this case.
I can respond to that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, there's no evidence that a semi-automatic was fired during this shooting. In fact, we don't believe that happened, but we do have evidence that one of the home invaders had a semi-automatic pistol, which we might assume could have been loaded with a full clip. We don't know whether it was or not. It was not fired. But we don't know that that necessarily was owned by Mr. Godfrey or where that came from. But we know that Mr. Okafor was interested in having armed people go into the residence. In addition, one thing I neglected to point out, but should, is that right after the messages I'm talking about, where it's here with a full clip, Mr. Okafor sends a message at 9 o'clock. So this is just 11 minutes after getting the message saying it's here with a full clip. They say all the witnesses are going to show up. Dan, who told you? Is the message sent from Dory, and he responds, my lawyer. So it seems to clearly be connected with the incident we're talking about the witnesses going to show up. The only case anybody's ever heard of when Mr. Okafor might be concerned about witnesses showing up is the upcoming trial that we're here for. And all this texting about this gun, where Mr. Okafor is asking, did you get it? And well, it's on its way, and here it is. It's here with a full clip. And he says, and then he starts talking about the witnesses going to show up, all essentially in the same conversation within minutes of each other, would clearly seem to be relevant.
No, I was.
We can't keep going back and forth arguing it.
I was going to cite a case, Your Honor, if I could.
Well, don't cite a case. Give me a copy of the case.
Well, I can give you this case. Your Honor, it's Moore v. State, 173rd, 1177. Talks about admitting, I believe, cartridges that have not been linked to the case. And I'm going to argue that these cartridges is the same as this clip that had been linked to this case. That case clearly says it's a reversible error to do so when it's not been linked up. And here, Your Honor, he's asking you to admit something that happened 16 days before this offense occurred, and through his own statements, it has nothing to do with this case, and we're asking the court to exclude it.
Hang on just a moment. This is a 3.850 motion. I've reviewed the case. The issue as to hearsay is one that I have to listen to the testimony for. It's an evidentiary issue that the court has to determine whether a proper predicate is laid in this matter, and then I can rule on it. I can't rule on it in a vacuum. The remoteness of the time frame is close enough in proximity that it would not be something that the court would exclude on remoteness. But I'll reserve on your other objection. You can raise it again when the witnesses testify. Thank you. Are we ready to get our jury back in?
Yes.
Okay. Not for ID. I think we're actually marked.
All right, you're there.
Please be seated. Welcome back. I know you think we just got in here. We did not. We've been here since 1:30, working on some matters to try and save some of your time. I need to ask you, has anybody contacted any of you or approached any of you since you left here for lunch? If they have, please raise your hands. I don't see any hands. Has anybody conducted any research on computers, newspapers, videos, internet, TV, or anything else on any of the issues, the parties, the attorneys, or the witnesses? If they have, please raise your hand. I don't see any hands. And has anybody seen any of the other jurors conducting any research in this matter? Don't see any hands. Anybody cold? I see some of the shawls are being used. There's more over there. If you need them, feel free to grab them. We're going to go ahead and continue on in this matter. Mr. Altman, would you call your next witness, please?
Next witness is Yolanda Manning.
I don't think that the deputy heard.
Who's that?
Come over to the deputy here.
Objection, are you approach, Your Honor?
I'm sorry?
Are you approach, Your Honor, on this?
You man, let me just get her seated if I can. Thank you, ma'am. We will be with you in just a moment, okay? Ma'am, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to ask you to talk into the microphone. That chair is bolted to the ground. Everybody tries to pull it forward and it won't move, okay? Would you introduce yourself to the jury and spell your first name and your last name for us?
Yolanda Bennett, Yolanda Bennett.
Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you for coming in. Let me take you back to September of 2012. At that time, did you know a person named Emmanuel Wallace?
Yes.
And you'd previously identified him in the courtroom?
Yes.
Okay. And did you have a phone back then, a cell phone?
Yes.
Is it the same phone you have today?
No.
Same phone number?
No.
Okay, you had a different phone number back then.
Yes.
Do you remember what your phone number was back then?
Yes.
What was it?
477153822.
And did you have a number of text messages with Emmanuel Wallace on September 9th of 2012?
Well, we used to text a lot
Right.
back then.
And I know you were asked this, you were interviewed by Detective Mareshi around that time, and you told him you had a lot of text messages with him that night. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. You don't remember what the content of those text messages was?
No.
All right. And let me just get something very clear. You don't know anything about a murder, who did anything like that,
No.
right? Okay. And do you remember today the phone number that Emmanuel Wallace had?
No.
Did you have it in your phone at the time you spoke to Detective Mareshi?
Yes.
And did you show it to him on your phone? You got the little address book out on your phone and you held it up and showed it to Detective Mareshi?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Any cross?
Ms. Bennett?
Yes. No. No.
Thank you. Anything further? Ma'am, you are free to go. Thank you so much. Please be very careful going down. Hold on to that side. All right. Who is your next witness, sir?
Next witness is Candy Lewis.
Thank you for joining us, ma'am. I'm going to ask you to lean into that microphone. That chair is bolted to the ground. Everybody tries to move it forward. You want to be about 2 inches away from the microphone, if you would, please. Would you introduce yourself to the jury and spell your first name and your last name for the court reporter, please?
It's Candia Lewis, Candialewis.
Thank you, ma'am. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you for coming in. Let me take you back to September of 2012. Did you know a person by the name of Emmanuel Wallace?
Yes,
And how did you know him?
he was my boyfriend.
Let me just make something very clear. You don't know anything about who committed a murder or anything like that, right?
No,
Where did you live back as of September 10th, 2012?
on Equitasian Court,
Do you remember the address?
8016 Equitasian Court.
8613? Does that sound
No,
right?
8016.
8016, okay. And Did you know a person by the name of Bessman Okafor?
Yes.
How did you know him?
He had kids with Emmanuel's sister.
All right. And were Emmanuel and Bessman friends?
Yes.
All right. Did you have do you know where, well, let me ask you this. Were you home the night of the murder, September 9th, 10th, 2012? Were you at that equitation court address?
No.
Do you know where Emmanuel was at that time?
No.
Did you have a cell phone back then?
Yes.
And what was that cell phone number? Do you remember?
My number, 407-394-4759.
Okay. And you said that Emmanuel also lived at that equitation court address?
Yes.
All right. Do you remember today, did you ever know Mr. Wallace's phone number?
Yes.
Do you remember what it is today, what it was back then?
I can't really remember right now.
Do you remember testifying previously, including at a deposition on July 31st, 2013?
Yes.
And you were asked about what his phone number was?
Yes.
And did you have a better recollection back then what his phone number was?
Yes.
Would it refresh your recollection to look at that deposition transcript to see
Yes.
what his phone number was?
Yes.
This is on page 29. Refresh your recollection?
Yes.
What was his phone number? What was Emmanuel Wallace?
It's 407-326-4071.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Cross-examination? Oh, hang on, ma'am, just a second. Don't be quite so anxious. We'll bug you out of here in a minute, I promise.
Miss Lewis, correct?
Yes.
Did you know any of Emmanuel's friends?
Yes.
Did you know Nolan Bernard?
Yes.
Were they friends or cousins?
Cousin.
They were cousins.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Much further.
Any redirect? All right, ma'am, thank you so much. You're free to go. Hold on to the side there. Please be very careful. Those steps are steep. Call your next witness.
Next witness is Detective Ed Michael.
Ed Michael. Okay. Have a seat, sir. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Move that microphone up just a little bit, if you would, please. All right. And I'm going to need you to be about 3 to 4 inches from the microphone. Your voice is pretty deep. It should pick up. Would you introduce yourself to the jury and spell your first name and your last name for the court reporter?
My name is Edward Michael. It's Edward Michael.
Thank you. Please proceed.
And where are you employed?
I'm a detective with the Orlando Police Department.
How long have you been there?
I've worked there for 15 years.
Do you have any area of specialization as a detective?
I'm a detective assigned to the Technology and Forensics Unit as a digital forensics examiner.
And what is a digital forensics examiner?
In our unit, I take in all forms of electronic evidence, such as cell phones, computers, things like that. What we do is we process those items for evidence for a case. Then we present our findings to a detective, the primary detective assigned to the case.
And what are your qualifications for that position?
I have a bachelor's and a master's in information security. In addition, I have about over 1,000 hours of specialized training in dealing with the majority of it is in cell phone forensics, also with computers, hard drives, things like that. I have multiple certifications on the different tools that we use. I've attended multiple training seminars on the tools that we use, along with general digital or computer forensics processes. In addition to that, I teach privately for two separate companies, specifically on matters of digital forensics.
Have you taught overseas?
Yes, I teach one company. We travel overseas twice a year, and then for the other company in the United States, I go to various cities, basically wherever they send me, to teach other detectives, depending on the course, either basic digital forensics concepts as it relates to phones, or I also have an advanced class that I developed that I teach here in Orlando once a year.
And you said you had a master's degree in what?
Information security.
Okay. Have you ever testified as an expert in court?
Yes, I've testified a total of 13 times as an expert. 11 times were for a circuit court for Florida, similar to the way we have trial here. The other 2 times were for federal district court, middle district court of Florida, which covers Tampa or Orlando.
Now, in this particular case, did you help out with a search that occurred at 1241 St. James Road in Orlando, Florida, and I believe it was September 10th of 2012?
Yes.
And let me show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit S. You know what this is?
Yes. This is an evidence envelope that we seal our evidence in. It feels like what's inside of it is one of the items, is a phone.
Is this an item that you personally recovered during that search on September 10th?
Once I open it, I'll know for sure, but I would say yes.
Are you going to ask him to open it? Let me make sure. Mr. Mosley, do you wish to look at the packaging or voir dire the packaging at all before it's opened?
No, no.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. Yes, this is one of the phones I examined.
That's one you recovered?
Yes, and I apologize, and one of the ones I recovered from the address in St. James Place.
And did you do any examination of that?
Yes.
Describe what sort of examination you did with that. First of all, were you able to determine what the phone number was?
Yes.
How did you do that?
For this particular phone, we use the SIM card inside of it, and that holds the information that the carrier uses to access the phone, and stored in that SIM card is the phone number.
How do you access the SIM card?
We have a device that we insert it to, and it reads it.
Does that tell you what the phone number is for that phone?
Yes.
Is that something you've done many times in the past?
Yes, several hundred times.
And what is the phone number for that phone?
The phone number for this one is 407-221-7378.
All right. And what kind of phone is that?
This is a Samsung.
Objection, Your
Well,
Honor.
here's what my question was. Is this a
Objection, Your Honor.
smartphone?
Yes.
Wait a minute, hang on a second. Yes, sir.
Wait, Coach.
I need to know the legal objection.
Fourth Amendment objection, right of privacy. A Fourth Amendment objection, right of privacy.
All right, please approach. Objection is overruled.
You were saying it's a Samsung phone.
Yes.
Okay, and is this what we would call a smartphone, something that connects to the internet?
Yes.
And is this a phone that can send text messages as well as make phone calls?
Yes.
All right. Were you able to, is there a date and time that's in that phone?
Yes, as part of the internal memory of the phone, it retains the date and time.
And were you able to determine whether that date and time was correct?
Yes, when I examined the phone, actually, I was the one that collected the phone from the residence in St. James. When I first collect a phone, we photograph it in place, and that's one of the several things that we do is check the date and time on it, and it matched when it was seized.
Did you look for text messages inside the phone?
After I completed my exam, yes.
All right, as part of your exam, though, you did that?
Yes.
Well, let me start somewhere else. Were you able to determine at all whether Bessman Okafor had used that phone?
Yes.
And how were you able to determine that?
After the extraction, the way we extract the data from the phones, I look at the complete data from inside the phone. We look at several things. Usually the obvious thing is the content of text messages, selfie shots where somebody stands in front of the mirror holding the phone so they can be seen, along with registered email addresses and accounts on the phone. In this case, if I can refer to my...
Your Honor, I'm now objecting to what you
Yes, sir.
found.
Okay, let's go ahead. Sidebar. Folks, I apologize. Sometimes things, that was bordering on do I take them out or not take them out, but we try to do it with you there. I apologize. The objection is overruled. Please proceed.
I believe you were testifying about evidence that this was Mr. Okafor's phone.
Yes.
And what was that?
I probably would just have to repeat it. I apologize. So again, I believe I mentioned text messages and things like photos. The type of extraction that I did in this type of phone lets me look in kind of the underlying files that run your phone, as opposed to just the things you see if you were to pick the phone up and scroll through it.
Can I get you to get a little closer to that microphone?
Yes, Your Honor, sorry.
Your phone is deep, but you've got an old judge, so I need to get
Sorry.
a little closer to it. Thank you.
So as part of that examination, for the way I extracted the data from the phone, I can see those underlying files that kind of make the phone work. Part of that data that's kept in there are things like email addresses, account numbers, account information, and there was multiple accounts, email addresses that were tied back to Mr. Okafor.
What about Facebook profiles?
Yes, Facebook profiles was one of the items that were signed in.
And
Under
was
his
there
name.
a Facebook profile that was signed into?
Yes, if I can refer to my report.
Sure.
The Facebook profile that was signed in had a username of Mademan. It's M-A-D-E-M-A-N. And the email address that was used was Bessman Okafor at AOL.com. The picture for the profile for Facebook matched the picture of the defendant.
And was that the only Facebook profile that was used on that phone?
Yes, that was the only one used on that phone.
Were you also able to tell the location of the phone at the time of these Facebook entries?
Yes. So when you're using certain chat applications, Facebook is one of them. It was one of several. Your location information is actually kept in the background, whether you allow your phone to do it or not. It's just a matter of whether it sends it to other people. So one of those tables or fields that I can examine with the type of extraction in the phone allows me to look at that GPS data. The GPS data is stored when a user sends a message. So in other words, when the person signed into this account, in this case Mr. Okafor, Facebook messaged people every time he sent a message. That location was stored in the phone.
And was that location consistent with his residence address?
Yes, I tracked the last two Facebook messages that were made on the night of September. One was September 9th, 2012 at 17:10 hours, and then there was a later one on September 9th, 2012 at 23:43 hours or 11:43 p.m.
All right. What about voicemails?
Yes, voicemails were stored on the phone as well. I believe I pulled two out for what we call evidentiary value. They had meaning to the case. The two I recovered, both messages were messages left for Bessman Okafor.
Okay. You mentioned this is a smartphone, correct?
Yes.
Where internet searches, Google searches can be made on it?
Yes.
Were you able to extract any Google searches that were made on September 9th of 2012 that appeared to have evidentiary value?
Yes. Let me just pull those up specifically. So again, one of the items we can recover are internet history items. I found several that were relevant to the case that I pulled from this phone on September 9th. I'm sorry.
Well, let me ask you the one about, I think there was one September 9th at 21:11 hours.
Yes.
Okay, what's that, 9/11, is that what that is?
9:11 p.m.
Okay. And what was that search?
There was a search, an actual search that was typed in is how do you remove gun residue? The user clicked on the top two searches. One was a Yahoo site where somebody else had asked the same question. So the user of the phone clicked on and viewed that answer, and the other one was a website with the title of Removing Gunshot Residue from Clothes and Skin.
Did you see any articles or searches that were made after the murder before you got the phone on September 10th?
Yes, there were additional searches done. Let's see if I can find the first one here.
It is leading, it's developing the testimony. He's just pointing him to a segment. Overruled.
Yes, I did find additional internet searches done later that day.
And what was the one at 12? Was there one at 12:23?
There was one on September 10th at 12:23, which is about 8 hours after the homicide occurred.
And what was that all about?
That was an article from clickorlando.com, which I believe is News Channel 6. The title of the article that was clicked on was "One Dead, Two Shot in Ocoee Home Invasion."
All right. Did you look for text messages on this phone?
Yes, the text messages proved to be a challenge.
Why were they a challenge?
Based upon the type of exam I did, when I initially recovered the phone, we use a tool called Physical Analyzer. It's written by a company called Cellebrite. It's CELLEBRITE. That tool kind of looks at those underlying files that we need and kind of puts it into human readable format for us. The initial exam I did in the phone showed that it only showed, I believe it was maybe 15 or 20 text messages just from the day of the homicide, from September 10th after about 8 o'clock in the morning, and all those had been deleted. There was actually one, what we call an allocated text message. So if you were to look at your phone, if I can give an example, if you were to look at your phone, an allocated text message would be one that you pull up a person and you see you have 2 texts with them. That's what we call allocated. When you delete the text message, it's gone from your screen, but it's still kept in the phone in several different databases, different locations. And until that database, there's internal stuff that goes on, until that database is what we call vacuumed or purged, whatever term you want to use, those messages are still able to be recovered. So what the tool did is it showed me the one allocated message that I could have looked on his screen and saw, and then it showed me about the 14 or 15 other text messages that were deleted from the same day. The reason I said it created a problem is based upon the other user activity on the phone. For example, I had call logs that went all the way back to May and June. I had internet activity that went back to February, March. There was a lot of usage on this phone, so it was very suspicious for me for these huge chunk of text messages all of a sudden all the way up till 8 o'clock in the morning didn't exist anymore.
And were you able to, just because they're deleted on the phone, were you able to extract them?
Yes. By doing a more detailed manual analysis, instead of depending on the tool, we go in by hand, and there's some techniques we use to pull that data out. It was discovered that all the text messages basically were the text messages were deleted twice on that phone. Based upon my experience and training and my opinion as an expert, the text messages were deleted prior to us seizing the phone. Based upon the communication when the police were outside the house. They were subsequently deleted earlier, probably before 8 in the morning, the 10th. All the texts were cleared out. So there was 2 deletions that happened. So I kind of worked backwards, and I apologize to the jury. So moving forward, you had the time of your homicide, and then at around 8, the text messages were all wiped out. Used the phone during the day, and then before the phone was seized, the text messages were wiped out again.
Were able to extract the text messages?
Yes, I don't have the exact number that I did. I only recovered ones relevant to the case, but all the text messages I manually carved out, I believe there was something around 11,000 text messages.
Legal basis? Overruled.
Let me, did you recover some text messages from August 24th or August 25th, 2012?
Yes.
And could you tell a phone number that those text messages were with?
Yes.
How were you able to determine that?
This was part of that, again, that big mass deletion of text messages that occurred. Things that are stored in the text message internally are things like the phone number, the name of the person, if they're in the contact list, the date and time the text message was sent or received, the content, some other additional data that the carriers used if there was a picture attached or anything like that. But the phone number is attached to each text message.
Let me show you State's Exhibit BS. BX for identification.
Hearsay objection is overruled.
Familiar with that document?
Yes.
And what does that show?
These show communication between Mr. Okafor's phone and a person who was in his contact list as Dory. Yes, the phone number listed, the phone number that the communication occurred with was 407-616-4234.
And is this an accurate summary of those text messages that occurred on August 24th of 2012?
Yes.
This time I would offer into evidence State's Exhibit BX.
Defense? Mr. Altman, let me see you and Mr. Mosley at the bench for just a minute. Objections overruled. Please proceed.
The exhibit that you just looked at, Exhibit DS,
I'm sorry, Mr. You were offering it, weren't you?
yes, that's what I asked.
Okay. Okay, go right ahead.
The Exhibit DX that you just referred to recites text messages. Are these verbatim copies of the text messages?
Yes.
And it also shows time that the text messages were received. Is that accurate from what you were able to extract?
Yes, that's the evidence. I mean, the report that I prepared, and those are taken right out of the database that stores them in the phone.
This kind of offers evidence to the DX.
And over objection. You have your objections on the record. The court overrules the objection. It will be admitted as the next numbered exhibit. Thank you.
And I have permission to publish this to the jury?
You may. I don't want to tax your abilities, but you might want to zoom in on that. Can you see those on your computer?
For the most part. I don't want to attack his abilities either.
Okay, all right.
Okay, and the title, is the title correct? It says recovered from Okafor's Samsung 835 cell phone 407-221-7378. Deleted text messages with Dory, and we give that phone number on August 24th, 2012 from 8:14 p.m. to 9:06 p.m.
Yes.
All right. In this first column where it says phone number, that's the, what is that?
That's the phone number that the communication was with.
The next column says name.
That's the name that was given to that phone number in the contact list. I didn't pick that name. That was who he was in the phone as, is Dory.
The next column says date, time, GMT. What's that? Greenwich Mean Time, I guess.
Yes, Greenwich Mean Time is the way when your phones store data, at least Apple and Android phones, everything is stored in GMT or UTC. Everything's stored. So this way it doesn't matter what time zone the phone was in when the call was made or received or the text message. It's always stored in the same format. And then we manually adjust whatever time it is, which is what you'll see in the next column where it says local.
The next column is date, time, local, so that would be Orlando time.
Correct.
And it's stated, and I guess it's military time, 2014. What is that?
Yes, it's just the way we list them. If you're not familiar with military time, just take that number and subtract 12, and you'll get your 7, 8, 9, 10 p.m.
So that's 8:14 p.m. 2014.
The first one is 8:14 p.m. Yes.
And then next is method, and what does that show?
Where the word sent is, that would be a message sent from Mr. Okafor's phone to the Dory contact, where it says RCD. That's just where I abbreviate received. So to make it a shorter column, that would be a text message that was received by the phone.
And the content is verbatim from what you extracted from the phone. Is that
Yes.
right? So the first one at 2014 is, did you get that? And that is sent from Mr. Okafor's phone.
Yes.
And there's a response. He said he was going to be on his way at 8:30.
Yes.
And the next one is from Mr. Okafor's phone. Cool, he says.
Yes.
And the next one, and this is now 8:49. It's here with a full clip.
Yes.
That's from Dory's phone.
Yes.
And then let's just go to the one at 2100, and that's sent from Mr. Okafor's phone, right?
Yes.
And what does that say?
The one on at 2000 hours, Mr. Okafor sent Dory's phone a text message that said, "They say all the witnesses going to show up."
And that's 2100 hours.
Yes.
And the next one is from Dory's phone at 2102 and says, "Damn, who told you?"
Yes.
And then Mr. Okafor responds at 2106, "My lawyer."
Yes.
All right. You also whose name in the address book was Twan.
Yes.
On September 9th of 2012.
Yes.
Let me show you State's Exhibit BR for identification. See if you can tell us what this is.
These are the text messages I recovered between Mr. Okafor and the contact listed as Twan, and then Twan is T-W-O-N.
What was the name put in the address?
Yes.
And what were the times of those messages?
The messages that are selected here are from September 9th, 2012 at 21:27 hours or 9:27 p.m. Up until September 10th, 2012 at 4:28 in the morning.
And are the messages that are listed there, are those verbatim from the phone?
Yes.
And this exhibit is set up the same way as the one we just looked at.
Yes, sir, it is.
This time I would offer to State's Exhibit BR.
Assume the same response? All right. Ruling will be overruled. You may.
And again, the title of this is recovered from Okafor's phone. Thank you. These are text messages with Twan, as you just described.
Yes.
And this is September 9th from 5:27 p.m. till September 10th at 12:28 a.m.
Yes.
And looks like the first one was sent from Mr. Okafor's phone at 5:27 a.m. Said I need you to slide over here.
That was 5:27 p.m.
Did I say that wrong?
Yeah.
5:27
17:27. Yes, sir.
And the response from Twan is, what happened?
Yes.
And then Mr. Okafor says, can't text it about my case.
Yes. That next blank area was it was just there was no content. It was just an empty message, like your finger skipped on the send button or whatever.
And then there seem to be some messages about talking about getting some stuff.
Yes.
Now I see the one from 2109 received says didn't find S asterisk asterisk asterisk. Like,
Yes.
not so easy to say. Did Twan, when he sent that message, put in asterisks?
No, some of the phones have a I don't know, swear filter, naughty word filter, and apparently his was turned on, so it does the first letter and then drop the last three. That was the actual text message that Twan's phone sent, and that was the actual text message that Mr. Okafor's phone received.
Okay, and there are further messages, and let me just point out the one at 2112. Damn, brah, I need that stuff. That's sent from Mr. Okafor's phone.
Yes.
And at 2127, damn, check everywhere, brah, this is a must.
Yes.
Okay? And the final one is at 1228, I'm going to need you, brah. That's sent from Mr. Okafor's phone.
Yes.
What is a MAC address?
Yes. MAC address is an acronym for Media Access Control.
Did you do anything with this phone concerning MAC addresses?
Yes. Can I expand on what a MAC address is a
Sure.
little bit? So any device that connects wirelessly or through Bluetooth has a unique number. It's called a MAC address, and that number's it's a long hexadecimal number. It has some letters and numbers in it. But what it is it's assigned by the manufacturer. It's 8 characters long. The first 4 characters identify the manufacturer. the last 4 characters are unique to that device. So in other words, every cell phone everybody has in their pocket that has a Wi-Fi that can connect to Wi-Fi, that phone has a unique MAC address to it. Your laptops have a MAC address. I mean, we can go on and on.
You're drifting away from that microphone.
Sorry, Your Honor. So taking the, one of the things that also have a MAC address is a wireless router at a house or a business or anything like that. Again, because it provides wireless communication, it uses that MAC address. So what happens is your wireless router, a wireless router, transmits that MAC address. And that's kind of how you find, it's one of the ways that you would find Wi-Fi, such as in this building. I believe it's called 9th Public or something like that. Kind of going on in the background as your phone or laptop would see that MAC address. It's the same thing that goes on in your residence or in your house. So on, do you want me to continue?
Why don't we get the question posed? He was explaining it. Now let's get the question.
Okay.
Have you explained what a MAC address is?
Yes, for now.
You mentioned wireless routers have MAC addresses.
Yes.
Would every time a cell phone is in an area where there's a wireless address necessarily connect to that?
It won't automatically connect, and it's kind of changed a little now, but this make and model phone at the time kept a kind of running record in the background of all the MAC addresses that it saw. I don't want to say subconscious, it's not the right term. It's transparent to the user. In other words, when this phone was in Mr. Okafor's pocket or whoever pocket, he didn't know what was going on, but it was keeping a constant record of all these MAC addresses that we're seeing.
And is there a record of every MAC address that phone was in contact with forever, or is there?
No, the record, it's forever changing as you move around. I mean, if you were to keep the record for even more than a day or two, there would be several hundred entries. On this phone, the particular file stored, or I was able to recover, it looked around like 20 MAC addresses.
So it would store 20 MAC addresses?
Yes.
Would those be the 20 most recent MAC addresses?
Yes, I did experimentation with another phone that was the same make and model, and it used what we call first in, first out method. In other words, the very first one it saw, as it reached that limit, would be the very first one out, and it just rolls through that throughout the day.
So would it be fair to say these are the 20 most recent MAC addresses?
Yes.
And you recovered this phone during the search of Mr. Okafor's house on the evening of September 10th, 2012, is that right?
Yes.
All right. So it would show, as of that time, the 20 most recent MAC addresses that phone was in contact with.
Yes.
All right. Now, when you pick that up from the phone, it's just this long identification number?
Yes, for the most part.
So you don't really know where those MAC addresses might be?
No, that's really the only thing that's stored there. I recovered this file from what we call the unallocated area of the phone. It's kind of an area where deleted things are kind of shoved off to the side until they're written over. So the fragment of this file didn't have any date and time information with it. It didn't have any location information with it. It was just this unique number, or unique series of numbers that I found that were tied in with other MAC addresses.
Did you ever go to the area of 503 Bernardino Drive in Ocoee?
Yes, sir, I did. And I'm looking desperately for the date that I went here. Give me 1 second. Here it is. On September 19th, 2012, I went to the 503 Bernardino Drive address.
And did you go in and around the neighborhood a little bit, and what you believe might have been the point of travel or the direction of travel that the home invaders took?
Yes, I was provided by Detective Mareshi. I was provided information, which it was believed that maybe the vehicle or the suspects in the case took. We have a device. It's called a Fluke. You can buy it online. It's nothing magical. They're just expensive. All it really does is take these wireless signals and just allows you to track them. And I don't mean track like record their data. I just mean It just captures a snapshot of all the wireless, these MAC addresses that it sees. From there, you could actually walk around if you were to use it to full of its ability and actually find an access point. So I took another detective and I went. We used this fluke and we started actually in the kitchen next to the wireless router at 503 Bernardino Drive, and I captured a snapshot. It's basically just taking all the wireless MAC addresses it can see and capturing it. And then I recorded 9 points throughout the route, throughout the neighborhood, where I was led to believe, which was the route the suspects took, to capture these different MAC addresses.
And did any of the MAC addresses that you captured with the fluke match any of the MAC addresses that were in these 20 most recent MAC addresses in the cell phone?
Yes. I numbered the points 1 through 9, and then I just put them on a Google map so I could remember where I was when I did it. So point 1 was inside the kitchen. Point 2 was actually at the end of the driveway, standing on the property line between the street, Bernardino Drive, and the house. 2 of the MAC addresses that were seen by the fluke in that location were also located in Mr. Okafor's cell phone.
Okay. And where would you pick up these MAC addresses if you were there at the house, at or near the house?
For the type of network, these MAC addresses were on what's called a G wireless network. The range is, the factory range, they say it's 300 feet. In environmental conditions, based upon your building and trees and moisture in the air and everything, the average is anywhere from 75 to 100 feet.
Okay. And if you were, say, in the driveway of that house at 503 Bernardino Drive, would you pick up any of the MAC addresses in that phone?
Yes.
Just one moment.
Any objection? Oh, okay. All right, the previous objection. All right, the previous objection was overruled, remain overruled. It'll be admitted as the next numbered exhibit. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I'm not going to keep those.
Cross-examination.
Yes, sir.
You're testifying here today about what you found inside the phone, correct?
Correct.
And you're not testifying as to possess the phone at the time.
As far as if I factually can put it in a person's hand?
Right.
No, without physically seeing the phone in a person's hand, no.
Right. As you said earlier, you said you testified to the phone being in Mr. Okafor's hand or whomever's pocket, what you said earlier.
Correct.
Because you don't know, right?
I know that we use totality of the items found in the phone to place them in. But, with 100% certainty, no. That couldn't be.
Right. And did you know that that one phone was used by 2 brothers and a sister in that same house?
I was informed of that, yes.
You're aware of that?
Yes.
So you knew that Brent lived there, Trent lived there, and Candace lived there, right?
Yes, I knew they lived there.
And you knew they all used the same phone?
Sustained.
Okay. And when you say Mr. Okafor's phone, have you ever gone to Sprint to see who owned this phone?
I did not go to Sprint, no. Detective Mareshi provided me with the what's called the carrier records. It's basically who you pay your bill to. And my information from the carrier records came back to a relative of Mr. Okafor, who also was the owner of record for 5 other phones that I examined. In other words, one person paid the bill for 5 phones or had 5 phones in their name.
And did you know that Emmanuel Wild from time to time used that phone?
There was no evidence of that.
Nothing further. Nothing further. Nothing further.
Thank you. Any redirect? Sir, you may step down. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, be careful of the step there.
I won't fall.
Madam Clerk, would you make sure you have all our exhibits so that none of them are accidentally walking out with us? Okay. Call your next witness.
State recalls Detective Michael Moreshi.
Thanks for asking. Have a seat, sir. I'll remind you, you're still under oath, and would you put your name on the record again, please?
Yes, sir. It's Michael Moreshi.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, last time you testified, I told you that we would recap every time, and now I'm going to break that rule. Do you remember at some point during the investigation of this case conducting an interview with a man named Antoine McLaren?
Yes.
Specifically, did you conduct an interview with him in December, on December 5th of 2012?
Yes.
Who was present for that interview?
It was myself. I believe it was Assistant State Attorney Kev Lewis, Antoine McLaren, and his attorney Roger Whedon.
Do you know how that interview came about? In other words, who arranged it and why it was conducted in the first place?
Mr. Whedon reached out to the State Attorney's office.
Okay. Mr. Whedon being Mr. McLaren's attorney?
Correct.
All right. Where was the interview conducted?
At the State Attorney's office.
And Mr. McLaren was present, correct?
Yes.
With his attorney?
Correct.
And then you asked him questions?
I did.
And at that point, he gave you some information relating to Mr. Okafor that was more detailed than his past information?
Yes.
At any point in your interview with Antoine McLaren, did you promise him anything?
No.
At any point in your interview with Mr. McLaren, did you threaten him in any way?
No.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Page 1152 of the discovery. Line 1 through 5. You audio recorded that interview, right?
I did, yes.
And it was subsequently transcribed, right?
Yes.
I'm going to hand you the document, 1152, if you want to look at the front, orient yourself, and let me know if you recognize that transcript.
Yes, I do.
And what is that a transcription of?
It's the statement of Antoine McLaren.
If you could read to yourself the first 5 or 6 lines and see if you recall the conversation you had before that interview began with Mr. McLaren.
Yes, sir.
What did you tell Antoine McLaren before he started to give you the information about Bessman Okafor?
Well, even with him showing up with his attorney, I wanted to make sure that this was a voluntary statement on his behalf, on his part. So I established that he was here without coercion or promise, and that he was here on his. Specifically asked him if he was here on his own, and he said yes.
I also want to ask you about Sharia Gordon. You conducted multiple interviews with Miss Gordon, is that right?
I did.
At any point in time, did you ever tell Miss Gordon what Mr. Cicerone had told you?
No.
Did you ever tell Mr. Cicerone about what Miss Gordon had said in her statements?
No.
So you never gave them the information from one another, is that fair?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Now, going back to your previous testimony, you indicated previously that last time you testified, you had been executed a search warrant at 1241 St. James Road, correct?
Yes,
And did you then go back to the crime scene on September 11th, 2012, the day after the murder at around 1 p.m.?
I did.
What was the purpose of going back to the crime scene that afternoon?
We went back to canvass the neighborhood, to knock on doors, talk to neighbors if they saw anything.
Did you speak to anybody when you did that?
I did.
Did you eventually speak to the homeowner at 630 Butterfly Creek Drive?
I did.
Commissioner Public States Exhibit 2?
Show it to Mr. Mosley. Let me see if he has any objection. Yeah, I just want to make sure he has no problem with it. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Detective Mareshi, your screen should be on.
It is, yes, sir.
I'll put the screen on for the jurors in just a moment. 630 Butterfly Creek Drive, can you show us where it is?
Yes, it's right there.
So it's the corner house.
Correct.
And what's the name of the homeowner that lived at that address that you spoke to on September 11th?
Her name is Elna Acurena.
When you spoke to Ms. Acurena, did she indicate she might have some information helpful to the investigation?
Yes, she did.
After you spoke to her, what is it that you did at that address?
I went inside and viewed a video system that she had set up.
How many video cameras did she have providing surveillance of her home?
I believe she had 3 exterior cameras.
And do you recall one specific camera that looked out on Jackson Street?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell us, or show us on the map actually, what the view, where the camera was located on the home and what the view was that it provided?
The view, it was attached to the rear corner of the house, in this rear corner, and it shot out this way.
Was the angle of the video from that camera, could you see the park down here at Sleepy Harbor and Jackson?
You could see that intersection. It was obviously dark at the time, the parts that we were viewing, but you could see that intersection.
Did you actually view previously recorded video from her system?
I did.
Did you specifically view video between 5 a.m. and 5:30 a.m. on the morning of September 10th, the night of the murder?
I did.
When you viewed the video, did it have a timestamp?
It did.
Did it have a date stamp?
Yes.
Did you take any efforts when you were viewing the video to verify the date and time on the video?
I did.
What did you do, if you could tell us, please?
As I watched the video on on Ms. Acurena's monitor, I called into our department, or Ocoee's police department, and asked what time that they officially had on their record.
And when you did that, was the time that they gave you accurate with the timestamp you saw on the video?
Yes.
Gentlemen, I approach the witness of what's been marked as State's Exhibit T and BY.
You may.
Detective Mareshi, I'm going to start by showing you actually State's Exhibit BY. It's a disc. Do you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize it to be?
This is a copy of the video I obtained from Elna Acurena.
And that video is the complete video with no timestamp. Is that right?
That's correct.
And how do you recognize it?
I viewed it and I put my initials on it.
Okay. And now I'm showing you State's Exhibit T in evidence. Do you recognize that video?
Yes, it's the same video.
Now, does that video have a timestamp on it?
It does.
And did you watch that, initial that disc?
I did.
Okay. Now, do both of these videos contain exact copies of the video you watched from her residence on September 11th?
Yes.
When you watched the video on September 11th, did it have information useful to your investigation?
It did, yes.
Did you request that, well, did you personally take the video from the system that day?
I did not.
Right. So how was the video eventually obtained and given or obtained by the Orlando Police Department?
I asked for one of our CSIs to go to the house and retrieve it.
Now, when you got it back in your possession at OPD and evidence, did it have a timestamp?
It did not.
Okay, but the video you viewed did.
Yes,
So at some point in the transaction, the timestamp went away.
correct.
Okay. As your investigation unfolded, did you ever compare the content of Nestle Cicerone's statements to you to the content of the video?
Yes,
And did the video corroborate the statements from Nestle Cicerone
yes,
in regards to vehicles used and time arrived?
yes.
Detective, at some point, did you ask a member of the Orlando Police Department to create still photographs from the surveillance video at 630 Butterfly Creek?
I did.
Sir, I approach the witness with the state's composite view.
You may.
Detective, I'm showing you state's composite view. Look at the photos and tell me if you recognize them, please.
I do, yes.
And what do you recognize them to be?
Those are still photographs of a white Chevy Impala passing in front of that camera at Butterfly Creek at a little after 5 that morning.
Do these still photos fairly and accurately represent the video that you watched that day?
Yes.
Did you have, or did you conduct any further investigation to look for additional videos that might provide evidence in this case?
Yes.
Was one of those videos a traffic camera at an intersection nearby the crime scene?
Yes.
Can you tell us about your obtaining the video from that particular location, where it is and how that came about?
There is a red light video at Clark and White Road, which is about 1 mile from the crime scene. And it's the closest major intersection from the crime scene. And we just contacted the company that owns the camera, American Traffic Solutions, and asked for their video for the time around the crime.
Did you personally go to that intersection and view the intersection that the camera had a view of?
I did.
And I approach the witness with what's been marked. States Exhibit A, B. Alpha Bravo, show counsel.
Okay. You may.
Detective Mareshi, showing you States Exhibit A, B. It's a map. Tell me if you recognize the areas depicted on the map.
I do.
And what do you recognize them to be?
The crime scene, the red light camera, and Marathon gas station.
And does that map fairly and accurately depict the locations on it?
Yes, it does.
Wait, is that a map or an overhead?
It is a map overhead view.
Okay. Thank you.
When you viewed the video, or did you eventually view the video that was obtained from American Traffic Solutions?
I did.
And when you viewed the video, did it have a timestamp?
It did.
Did you recognize the vehicles that were on the tail end of the 2 hours that were provided?
Yes.
And was the direction of travel that those vehicles took consistent with the testimony you received from Nestle Cicerone and Sharia Gordon?
It was, yes.
And was it also consistent as to the time frame with the video that you had from 630 Butterfly Creek Drive?
Yes.
You may.
Detective Mareshi, I'm showing you State's Exhibit BC. take a look, if you could, and tell me if you recognize it?
Yes,
And what is BC? What does it contain, this?
it is a copy of the red light video.
All right? And then also State's Exhibit V. Tell me if you recognize that video.
It is also a copy of the red light video.
State's Exhibit V is shorter than State's BC, correct?
Correct.
And State's Exhibit V has a timestamp. Is that also correct?
That's correct.
Did you compare the timestamp on State's Exhibit V to the video in State's Exhibit BC?
I did.
And was the timestamp on V accurate as to the video on BC?
Yes.
And did they both depict the intersection that you have personally been to and witnessed?
Yes.
Finally, Detective, did you supervise the obtaining of a third surveillance video in regards to your investigation?
Yes.
And where did that video come from?
That was from the Marathon gas station, which was located about 3.5 miles from the crime scene.
Did a member of law enforcement eventually obtain video from that gas station?
Yes.
Now, did you ever personally go out to the gas station?
I did, yes.
And so you looked at the surveillance video yourself, is that right?
I did, yes.
And then just as in the other piece of evidence, you sent somebody back to pull it from the drive.
That's correct.
When you viewed the video from the Marathon gas station, did you recognize persons and vehicles in it?
Yes, I did.
Persons and vehicles in the video, were they consistent with the testimony you have received from Sharia Gordon and Nessie Cicerone regarding their whereabouts on September 10th of 2012?
I did. Yes, I did.
Remember, the witness left the mark as State's Exhibit O.
You may.
Detective, I'm handing you State's Exhibit O. Oscar, you recognize that disc?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize it to be?
It is a copy of the Marathon gas station video.
Is that a fair and accurate copy of the video that you viewed from the gas station at Marathon Gas Station 8299 Silver Star Road?
It is.
I'm going to approach the witness who has been marked as State's Exhibits P and W.
You may.
I'm Detective Reshi, and I'm going to show you State's Composite P. It's a series of photographs. You recognize the still photographs in the composite.
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize those photos to be?
Those are still photographs from the Marathon videotape.
And do they fairly and accurately depict the video that you observed in regards to this incident?
Yes.
And that's 11 photos for the record. And finally, State's Exhibit W, composite of 10 photos. Please look at them and tell me if you recognize them.
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize the photographs in W to be?
Those are still photographs from the red light video.
They were created in your direction as well, is that right?
That's correct.
Your Honor, at this time, the state seeks to omit State's Exhibit A, B, and the evidence as the next numbered exhibit.
Any objection? It'll come in as the next numbered exhibit. Tell us what that is, just for record purposes.
It's a map, Your Honor, that contains the Marathon, the location of the Marathon gas station, the camera at Clark and White, and the crime scene.
Thank you.
Detective Mareshi, in the video that I showed you from the Marathon gas station, you said you recognized persons within it. Is that right?
Yes.
Any persons in particular?
Yeah, the Sharia Gordon was inside the Marathon paying.
How did you know it was Sharia Gordon in the video?
She's very pregnant in the photograph.
I'm sorry, permission to publish?
You may.
Exhibit 25?
You may.
Again, Detective, if you could just now for the jury show us, orient us to the map, what we're looking at, and the videos you obtained from the places on the map.
This accurately shows the red here is the crime scene. This is the intersection of Clark and White, and then the Marathon gas station is right here.
I have no further questions for Detective Moreshi at this time.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Yes, sir. Detective, I believe it states O. You said you recognized the persons in the video, and you're talking about one person.
Yeah, one person.
Okay, Sharia Gordon.
Correct.
Nothing further.
Any redirect? Sir, you may step down. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Folks, let me give the jury just a 5-minute break, and then when we come back, we'll finish on for the rest of the day. Folks, do not discuss the case. Leave your pads on your chairs. When you come back, check your pads to make sure you have enough pages if you need more, and we'll see you in about 5 to 10 minutes. All right. 5 to 10 minutes, folks. There's enough for a restroom break if anybody needs it.